Final Fight was released in 1989 by Capcom. A side-scrolling beat-em-up, the game was inspired by the success of the Double Dragon games, but it was promoted at trade shows as a sequel to Street Fighter. Feedback from players, however, suggested the game was too different to be considered a successor to that game, so the name Final Fight was finally settled upon. An original game with original characters then, although the roots of the game's development can still be glimpsed in the description of Mike Hagar, mayor of Metro City, who is described as a former Street Fighter. Despite the game's identity crisis, it ultimately went on to become one of the most successful games of the year, well regarded by critics and gamers alike. So what's it about? Well, Mayor Mike Hagar has set himself the task of cleaning up the streets of the crime-ridden Metro City, and the Mad Gear Gang are the biggest stumbling block of all, controlling most of the major crime operations citywide. When they catch wind of the mayor's plans, they attempt to buy him off, but the heroic Hagar refuses the bribe, at which point the Mad Gear Gang kidnap his daughter Jessica, hoping to force him to leave them the hell alone. Hagar recruits Cody, Jessica's boyfriend, and his best friend Guy, and together the three of them determine to take down Mad Gear once and for all, by thumping them all to death one by one, which may not be the smartest move when someone is holding a gun to your daughter's head, but okay. Up to 2 players simultaneously can play through the game's 6 city blocks, starting in the slums and ending in Uptown and the opulent high-rise of Mad Gear Kingpin Belga. The player characters are large and well animated, taking up most of the screen, unlike Double Dragon where the sprites seem positively puny by comparison. The backgrounds are functional and convey the sense of an 80s action movie well enough, but the heroes and enemy character design, those are the real stars of the show. They're very 80s punk with many pop culture references such as the tall wrestler character Andor based on Andre the Giant, and allusions to 80s musicians and bands like Axl Rose, Sid Vicious and Poison. The latter is intriguing in that Poison is a long-haired, stiletto-wearing psycho, but the developers felt players might feel bad beating up a woman, so they stated in design documents and in the Famicom's game manual for the port that Poison was transgender. So that makes beating the shit out of him, her, or them okay, I suppose. Yep, that makes sense. There are conflicting reports that the game's developers were inspired by the 80s movie Streets of Fire, which I did watch before writing this review. That is dedication for you. Either dedication or I don't have a life. Anyway, it's the story of a guy called Cody trying to rescue his ex-girlfriend from a motorcycle gang. The acting is really hammy and the script seems to have been written by an 8-year-old, but it's possible the setting and the overall tone influenced something in Final Fight, sure. Willem Dafoe is in it, by the way, and Rick Moranis, which is weird. It's not very good. The music is the work of multiple composers, although only Yoshihiro Sakaguchi was credited until the 2014 release of the Final Fight original sound collection. The soundtrack fits what is essentially a digitized martial arts flick, but it's hard for me not to compare it to what I think is the far superior Streets of Rage soundtrack. Streets of Rage was Sega's answer to Final Fight on the Mega Drive. It's a little bit of an unfair comparison because obviously Streets of Rage wasn't around when this game was released, but the music in that game is just so good that this kind of seems bland by comparison. The sound effects, however, are excellent and a big reason why the game's combos, flying kicks and body slams feel so satisfying. Everything lands with a staccato series of whips and cracks, or a meaty thump when you plant a guy's face in the tarmac. I usually get around to the gameplay before graphics and sound, but those are the things that really stand out to me, less so the gameplay in Final Fight. It's very simple with only 2 buttons, one for jump, one for attack. You can perform an area attack by pressing both together, good for clearing up multiple enemies when you're surrounded, although it does drain your health. The combos, while satisfying, are all predetermined routines. You just hammer the attack to execute them, and often, no matter what you do, the enemies will occasionally get a hit in, and there's no block or counter. There's not very much you can do at that stage. The arcade cheese is pungent, with frequent stun locks that you can't break out of, and enemies charge in from off-screen, giving you little chance to react. Whilst Hagar, Cody and Guy do fight differently, one is strong, one is average, one is quick, the differences aren't that major. It doesn't seem to have that much of an impact on gameplay, really. Apparently Cody is good with knives and Guy can jump off walls, but I never discovered that during the course of my play. Often I play these games without much research. That for me comes later, so I want to do it as if I encountered the game in the arcade without any kind of background. So if I don't encounter a certain mechanic in the general course of play, then I just miss it. but I'm not sure those few special character traits would have made that much difference to the general flow of combat and whatnot. One thing I do think is a missed opportunity is the fact that the game isn't 3-player co-op. I can only think this is because an early design decision was to make the sprites so big on the screen you would need to pull back the camera and show more of the game world for there to be room for 3 characters, but I think it's kind of a missed opportunity. Could have been a good 3-player game. In conclusion, Final Fight is not as complicated and tactical as the beat-em-ups that would come later, but it was a big hit at the time and cemented the genre as a fixture for years to come. I would suggest playing it with infinite continues enabled and just mash the attack as fast as you can. Thank you for watching this retrospective and review. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a real fun one for me. I learned a lot of information that I was not aware of, and I hope you've learned a few things too. If you'd like to check out some more of my reviews and retrospectives, they should be coming up on the screen here for you to choose from. And do visit my channel and consider subscribing. Bye for now.